I thought I was helping my friend by being honest about their rude roommate. Instead, I accidentally sparked drama, leading to them spreading lies about my relationship status. Now my entire friend group dislikes them. Am I the asshole here? For context, all my friends and I, ages 18-19, are freshmen in college. In total, there are 12 people in my friend group, so there are many perspectives to consider, but they are all on my side or my friend's side. When we all graduated from high school and began preparing for college, my friend Leslie, 19, decided to opt for random roommates. As a result, they were assigned 3 random people, one of whom is Benny, 19. Benny, to put it simply, is a terrible roommate and an unfriendly individual. From the first meeting between Benny and Leslie, Benny has been rude. The two of them decided to meet up, along with another roommate, and Benny was notably disrespectful to the waiter, being snappy, scoffing, etc., and made snide remarks about the third roommate, critiquing their appearance and judging the choice of restaurant as cheap poor people stuff. Naturally, Leslie, being a very kind person, attributed Benny's behavior to a bad day, but it left a sour impression on my friends and me after hearing the story. Later, after Leslie and Benny moved in with the other roommates, Benny began to leave dirty dishes, trash, and food around for days. When asked to clean up, Benny responded that their depression was too overwhelming for them to tidy up their mess. While I empathize with the challenges of depression, as I experience it myself, and understand the lack of motivation for basic tasks, Benny would prepare a meal for all 4 roommates, without consulting them on whether they wanted a meal, only to leave the mess unattended for an extended period. When Leslie requested that Benny clean up, Benny would snap back and become defensive about mental health, accusing Leslie of being rude for insisting that they clean up when they were too depressed to do so. Naturally, hearing this made me increasingly upset for Leslie. For clarification, I am a very direct, protective, and blunt person, so when I dislike someone, especially when they are rude to my friends, it is evident, and I am unafraid to express my dislike to the person's face. I still aim to be respectful and exhibit basic kindness, but I make my opinions known. As Benny's behavior continued, and Leslie shared more stories casting Benny in a negative light, my dislike for Benny grew stronger. The situation came to a head during Thanksgiving last year. My friend group decided to host a Friendsgiving, and Leslie was discussing it with their roommates when Benny essentially invited themselves. My friend group and I decided to give Benny a chance and allowed them to attend when Leslie inquired if it would be acceptable. So, when the day arrived, and we all gathered at one of my friends' houses, Benny was there. I will be completely honest and fair in admitting that I was not kind and acted like a jerk. When Benny spoke to me, I kept my responses short and tried to avoid them as much as possible in a fairly confined space. With my friends, I was much more friendly, making jokes and being myself, but when Benny addressed me, I shut down and responded as tersely as possible before exiting the conversation. At one point, when Benny asked for my opinion on their brownies, I simply replied that they were fine and moved on. After Friendsgiving, Leslie informed me that Benny believed I disliked them, to which I took no offense and simply acknowledged as true. This all came together about a month ago when 2 of my friends and I, along with Leslie, decided to surprise another friend by visiting her for the day, as we all attend colleges quite far apart. The plan involved 2 of my friends and me driving down while Leslie, who goes to college with the friend we were surprising, ensured she arrived at the lunch spot on time. However, when we arrived, Benny was there, standing next to Leslie and the friend we were surprising. After Friendsgiving, I had reflected on my behavior and decided I was a bit too harsh on Benny, choosing to be more friendly and open to conversation with them despite their unexpected presence. So when I saw Benny, I made an effort to respond positively to their friendly greetings and small talk, while still gravitating towards my friends and spending time with them. As we sat down, I made a light-hearted joke about making Leslie's boyfriend of 2 months, whom I had yet to meet, Holden, 19, jealous, as Leslie mentioned that he might join us. This was because I tend to be jokingly flirty with all my friends, and I made the comment without any serious intention behind it. After eating, we went to the apartment of the friend we were surprising for a bit, where we hung out briefly, before deciding to visit Leslie and Benny's apartment to drop Benny off and see the place. However, due to riding arrangements, I ended up needing to ride with Benny and Leslie. So I boarded the car with them, and when we arrived at Leslie's apartment, Benny pulled Leslie aside for a brief conversation before we all left to walk around the college campus and study. While we were at their apartment, Benny began discussing taking down the minions from Leslie's minion wall when Leslie did something they didn't like. The minion wall consists of a collection of printed pictures of minion memes that Leslie enjoys and has displayed. My other 3 friends and I found this behavior to be super weird and controlling. During lunch, Benny was also quite handsy and flirty with Leslie, despite knowing that Leslie was in a relationship and Benny being in their own relationship. This has been an ongoing concern. Holden previously expressed his discomfort with Benny's behavior towards Leslie and asked Benny to tone down the flirting and physical contact. Afterward, Benny labeled Holden as insecure and controlling, but Leslie supported Holden's stance. Unfortunately, Benny's behavior remains unchanged. Later, Leslie pulled me aside and mentioned that Benny claimed I slammed their car door, which I did not recall doing. Although I dislike Benny, I would never mistreat someone else's property, regardless of my feelings toward that person, as it is not mine to damage. I was puzzled, and so was Leslie when I expressed my lack of memory regarding slamming the door. While everyone was studying, I decided to meet up with my brother, who was in town, and as Leslie accompanied me to where my brother was parked, they showed me their phone, which displayed a text message from Holden. It was a screenshot of Benny alleging that I kissed Leslie to make him jealous, and that Benny was just warning him. I was extremely confused. I have never dated anyone, let alone kissed anyone. Leslie was equally perplexed and upset, leading me to exclaim, "What the heck?" Leslie said they would confront Benny about it, and I left to spend time with my brother. Later, when I reunited with the rest of my friends to depart, they informed me that Benny and Leslie had argued, and Benny called Holden insecure and fragile for taking the text seriously, claiming that Benny meant it as a joke. Leslie was upset that Benny would say something like that at all since it was a false claim about me kissing them. Up until that point, the friend group had remained neutral towards Benny, or at least leaned towards disliking them. Now, the group genuinely dislikes Benny, and I feel responsible for creating a situation where Benny harbored enough animosity towards me to attempt to disrupt Leslie's relationship as a way to upset Leslie with me, which everyone agreed is the most likely motivation behind Benny's actions. Furthermore, Leslie and Benny are still at odds to the extent that Benny is currently ignoring Leslie. So, am I the jerk for inadvertently causing my friend group to dislike my friend's roommate? Story 2. Am I 18F, the asshole for not wanting my ex 20F, and my guy best friend 19M to be in contact? So, I do not use Reddit very often, but after today, I feel incredibly compelled to write this down, and I am in desperate need of advice. For some context, I am an 18-year-old female, and my friend is a 19-year-old male. I want to make it extremely clear that I am a lesbian and I have never, nor will I ever, have any interest in dating this guy. I have been friends with him since the 6th grade, and we have been quite close. He is very reserved about his life and does not share information, even with his closest friends. He does not often discuss his emotions unless it is in the moment, nor does he talk about his relationships or even what he is up to at times. Although it may seem strange, I have never questioned him or his loyalty and vice versa. I understand his need for privacy, and I do not ever pressure him to share unless it is in a joking manner or brought up by him. A little context on my ex, trigger warning for a few dark topics. My best friend, who remains my best friend to this day, introduced me to her. Although she never expected us to date, she was very supportive throughout the entire experience. I love her. However, my ex was quite emotionally manipulative or abusive, or however you would like to term it. We were both victims of abuse at a very young age, and it somewhat manifested throughout our relationship. Although I had my faults, she did many messed up things that I do not engage in. I understand the saying, hurt people, but I firmly believe this is not always true. She, on the other hand, was a prime example of why this saying can hold true. She did a lot of things. We began dating during middle and high school, and our relationship lasted on and off for 2 to 4 years. We still consider ourselves friends in a way, but we do not interact for many reasons. I recognize that this was a middle and high school relationship, but it was emotionally challenging for me, as she was the first person to truly accept me after I had been bullied for most of my childhood, among other things. We genuinely connected, and in a way, I still cling to her as I am in the process of moving on. One of the things she did was flirt with the guy friend in this story right in front of me and continue to maintain contact with him even after I made it clear that it was uncomfortable. This occurred during one of our off periods, but we were still in contact and were starting to develop a very toxic yet intimate relationship. Another example is that she continuously blamed me for the issues in our relationship. However, from my perspective, I was always trying to encourage her to communicate with me, while she kept shutting herself off. It felt like walking in a minefield, where I did not know what would set her off. Whenever it was a bad day, I later discovered that her way of coping when she was drunk and angry was to talk to other people and essentially cheat on me. I would often spend days in bed. During our numerous off periods, I would remain at home feeling depressed, which led to a lot of self-harm and other issues. When I tried to address this with her in an attempt to mend things, she would claim I accused her of causing my self-harm and would outright tell me it was my fault, something I never said. Another troubling event was when she catfished me as someone I thought I could trust and had become very close to on Snapchat. I later found out that it was a fake account that she and her friends had access to, which they used to mock me, spread false information, or simply say awful things to me while pretending to be someone who was just looking out for me. This, of course, led to significant paranoia and increased my depression. These are only a few examples of her behavior. Later, when I recounted this story, I was constantly blamed and ridiculed by her. I endured a lot of this, which I acknowledge is partly my fault. I was also naive and had placed a significant amount of trust in her, as she was my first real relationship as a very young teenager. After she began flirting with my friend, an entire situation unfolded where we all went out as a group, me, my ex, my guy friend, and a few others we were friends with at the time. We hung out in my backyard, eating pizza for a while, and when we became bored, we decided to walk to a nearby gas station and Starbucks, since it was within walking distance. We took my speaker and walked from my house while my family was out at a concert, leaving us home alone. Halfway there, she started to act strangely, and my girl best friend, the one who introduced me to her, was somewhat oblivious to it, but I do not blame her. It started to rain, and feeling already uncomfortable, I decided to head back home to clean up since we had left a bunch of pizza and drinks outside where we were eating, and they would all get wet. A few others walked back with me, noticing my unease. We arrived home, cleaned up, and I explained the situation between my ex and me. They understood. One of the girls was my guy best friend's ex and was jealous too. After we finished changing out of our wet clothes and cleaning, we sat down and talked a bit more while we waited for the group to return with snacks. When I checked my phone, I saw she was posting photos at Starbucks with his jacket draped over her shoulders, captioning it "soft launch," and another that said, "Just kidding, we are just friends." Although she claimed she was joking, it was still odd that she would suggest more than just friendship in her post, and she continued posting about them on her story. At that point, my feelings about the situation were very clear. I was uncomfortable and extremely upset, and I started crying not because I still cared about her, but because out of all the guys, she chose my best friend, whom I, even though I know this is cliché, consider my brother. This was only one of 2 instances of them spending time together. The other was when they were hanging out and walking through the park. Although she insisted nothing happened, I still felt uncomfortable because I knew she liked him. It did not help that, after only 3 days of knowing him, she began experiencing severe panic attacks and meltdowns in front of me, about him, and frequently posted about him as if she had just lost the love of her life. It was a terrible situation. Now, on to today. This will be brief. He, along with a few others excluding my ex, were hanging out and going to dinner to celebrate my friend's birthday. Happy birthday, Raya. While we were there, he took a few photos and posted them on Instagram. I have been aware that he has her added on there for a while, although I am still uncomfortable. I never question his loyalty, as I mentioned. He snapped a picture of me, and to ensure I did not look bad, I glanced at his phone over his shoulder as he posted it to a song of his choice. When I looked, I saw a message that read, "Sent 3 hours ago," on my ex's Instagram handle. I did not mention it out of fear of being ridiculed again, and while I do not think he would do that, every time I try to bring it up, I feel immensely anxious. I do not understand what they could even be discussing, and I guess that despite my knowledge of his loyalty, a part of me deep down fears that perhaps he is not. I'm not sure if this is irrational, or if I am the one being unreasonable for wanting him to completely block her. I feel like a jealous high schooler again. I am in serious need of help. I apologize for such a lengthy rant, but I am truly stuck here. What should I do? Story 3. My boyfriend, 28M of 8 months, hasn't said, "I love you," but verbally commits through talks about moving in, marriage, and kids. Any advice on how to cope with a lack of "I love you"? Hello, everyone. As the title indicates, I want to start by sharing that my 27-year-old female boyfriend, 28-year-old male, of 8 months has not yet expressed his love for me. He has communicated to me that he has never really experienced a serious relationship as an adult and has never come close to saying, "I love you," in an adult relationship. He mentioned that the closest he came was dating a friend of several years in high school for a few weeks, and even then, it was mostly just puppy love. He is an amazing guy. I have been in long-term relationships, 2, 4, and 5 years, and have never felt so appreciated, seen, valued, and fulfilled in my life, which is why I feel like such a bad person for experiencing heartache over the fact that he has not yet said, "I love you." He has expressed that I make him feel incredible and that he has never experienced such intense emotions for anyone before. He has initiated discussions about moving in together, timelines, location, budgeting, combined finances, getting engaged and married timelines, our wedding dance song, what marriage would look like for us, and raising children together, how many, parenting styles, financial capabilities, and parental roles, as well as every other aspect one would expect someone in love to discuss. I recently told him that I could not move in with him until we met certain goals, and when he realized I meant saying, "I love you," he simply responded with, "Ah." I am deeply in love with him, so I find myself naturally contemplating these things. I have not said, "I love you," either, but I do so with the intention of not accidentally pressuring him, which we have discussed and agreed upon. I seek advice and need to vent because I feel so conflicted. I feel like the luckiest person in the world to have his affection and care, yet I feel heartbroken that he has confirmed he still does not love me. I believed he was nearly there, about 4 months ago, only to find out he had only just begun to think he might have those feelings developing. We used to dance and gaze into each other's eyes, and I swore I could nearly feel the love emanating from his chest, only for him to say he never felt that. I cried myself to sleep that night, yet I feel so childish for doing so. We recently discussed his perception of love and what he needs to feel comfortable expressing it. He stated he will not say it until he feels his heart overflowing with love and adoration for me constantly, not just in specific moments or circumstances. I feel disappointed and anxious. It almost seems unrealistic to me, and it makes me worry about whether he will ever reach that point. To provide context for my anxieties, in my first relationship, I waited a year to tell my partner I loved him, only for him to say he did not love me and did not see himself ever loving me. In my most recent 4-year relationship, I was with a man who felt extremely uncomfortable saying, "I love you," and he may have said it a total of 10 times throughout those 4 years. I cannot endure that again. I need to hear it in a relationship. It offers a reassurance like no other. The waiting makes me fear that one of these 2 scenarios will occur again, which I have communicated to my current partner, but it made him feel as if I was trying to subconsciously pressure him. I assured him that was not my intention, but I felt I needed to explain why sometimes, when we are looking into each other's eyes, he can see how sad I become, but I refuse to discuss why because all I want to do is tell him I love him, fully aware that he does not feel that way about me. I feel very frustrated and whiny. He treats me exceptionally well in every other aspect, and no one is perfect. I am seeking advice on how to ground myself in reality when experiencing sadness and disappointment. No one is perfect, but he is very close. He is not saying, "Never, just not yet," but it still feels like a rejection. Every moment that I feel he could potentially express it, and he does not feels like an outright rejection. Do you have any advice on how to stop complaining to myself about the absence of I love you? I'm trying to avoid making him feel pressured or uncomfortable when these moments of disappointment regarding the timeline or pacing arise. In summary, my boyfriend of 8 months refuses to say, I love you, until he feels sparks flying from his heart 24/7, despite initiating plans to live together, get married, and have children, among other things. I thought he was much closer to it than he truly is, and in what used to be moments of love I felt toward him, I now experience sadness, confusion, and disappointment, knowing he does not share the same feelings. Furthermore, I feel guilty and frustrated with my own internal emotional response. I feel like I am losing my mind. Help.